Who left my Omega in the rain? Alpha King Everett Blackwell's voice cut through the storm so sharply that every guard at the north gate forgot how to breathe. Clara Whitmore stood 6 feet beyond the iron arch, soaked through her gray work dress. One hand wrapped around the strap of her worn satchel, the other clenched around a dinner token no one had honored. Rain slid down her cheeks fast enough to hide the tears, but not fast enough to hide the scent of them. Everett had followed that scent from the royal council chamber, past 11 arguing elders, down 4 flights of black marble stairs, and across half an acre of flooded courtyard because the wolf in his chest had risen like a living command. Mine. The word had not been spoken aloud. It did not need to be. Every wolf at the gate felt it. Clara lowered her eyes because pack instinct was older than pride, but her voice stayed steady. Your Majesty, I think there's been a mistake. One of the guards swallowed. Another stared very hard at the wet stones. Everett looked at the silver dining token in her hand. It was bent at the edge, like someone had pressed it back into her palm instead of letting her pass. Explain, he said. The senior gate officer went pale. My king, Miss Whitmore wasn't listed for the full moon table. Council order said lower registry Omegas were to report to service quarters after sundown. Clara gave a small, tired laugh. Not warm. Not amused. Just the sound people make when they have been embarrassed too many times to waste energy acting surprised. Lower registry, she said. That's the polite version. Usually they just forget my name. Something moved across Everett's face. Not softness. Not yet. Everett Blackwell had been trained from childhood to keep his emotions locked behind his ribs, where kings kept dangerous things. But his wolf, Ashen, had no respect for royal manners. Inside him, Ashen pressed forward again, furious and focused on the shivering Omega at the gate. Everett stepped closer. Clara did not step back. That bothered him more than fear would have. Fear was familiar. This quiet, soaked dignity was not. Your name, he said. Clara Whitmore. The guard beside her flinched, and Everett noticed. He always noticed. Whitmore, Everett repeated. The name struck something old in the room of his memory, but the storm swallowed it before he could catch it. Clara lifted her chin just enough to meet his eyes. I work in the Scent Archive, Your Majesty. Basement level. East corridor. Most people find the mold before they find me. A laugh almost escaped one of the younger guards, then died when Everett looked his way. Clara's lips twitched once, like humor was the last dry match she had left. Everett removed his black coat and placed it around her shoulders. The courtyard went so silent the rain sounded rude. From this moment on, he said, loud enough for the wall guards, the servants under the awning, and the council spies near the lantern posts to hear. Clara Whitmore is not to be turned away from any door in my territory. Clara's fingers tightened on the coat. That is generous, Your Majesty. It is not generosity. His voice dropped. It is correction. For 1 second, the bond between them warmed under the rain, fragile and impossible, like a candle refusing to die in a flood. Then the High Council doors opened behind him. Lord Silas Gravett stood at the top of the steps, silver-haired, dry, and smiling like a man who had already buried the truth once and knew where he had left the shovel. Your Majesty, Silas called. Step away from the girl. Everett did not move. Clara did. Lord Silas Gravett's order hung in the rain like a bad smell. Step away from the girl. The guards looked at the Alpha King. The servants looked at the stones. Clara Whitmore looked at nobody, which somehow made the whole courtyard feel worse. Everett Blackwell turned slowly toward the council steps, his coat still wrapped around Clara's shoulders. You will not call her that again, he said. Silas smiled as if he had been offered tea instead of a warning. Of course, Your Majesty. Miss Whitmore, then. A registry Omega assigned to basement scent records, currently outside her approved station after curfew. Clara's mouth moved, almost a smile. I was outside because your office locked me out of dinner. A few servants under the awning went still. Silas did not even blink. Administrative confusion. It had a signature. Clara lifted the bent silver token. Yours. Everett held out his hand. Clara hesitated before giving it to him, and that hesitation landed harder than any accusation. She did not trust him. Not yet. Maybe not at all. Everett looked at the token. Rainwater ran over the stamped seal of the High Council. Ashen pressed against his ribs, low and restless. Mine was still there, but beneath it came something sharper. Wrong. Everett raised his eyes. Clara Whitmore will stay in the East guest wing tonight. Silas's smile thinned. That wing is reserved for ranked guests. Then rank has learned to share. The younger guard made the mistake of coughing into his fist. Clara glanced at him, and for half a second her expression softened. Everett noticed that too. She looked cold, humiliated, exhausted, and still somehow more concerned with a nervous guard than with her own public insult. That made no political sense. It made Wolf sense. Inside the palace, everything changed and nothing changed. Servants moved quickly, but not warmly. Doors opened. Eyes followed. Whispers slipped through corridors faster than wet shoes on polished marble. By morning, half the pack had given Clara a new name. The Rain Girl. The Basement Omega. The King's Mistake. Clara heard all three before breakfast. She sat at the far end of a small sitting room with a cup of coffee she had not touched, wearing a borrowed sweater 2 sizes too large, and Everett's coat folded neatly beside her like evidence. Everett stood near the window, reading a council report he had not absorbed for 9 minutes. "You should eat," he said. "You should stop staring at that paper like it insulted your mother." His gaze lifted. Clara looked tired, but her voice had teeth. "I am not staring. You have been on the same line since I walked in." Everett set the paper down. "You walked in 6 minutes ago." "7," she said. "Basement workers know time. Nobody comes looking for us unless something smells wrong." His jaw tightened. She saw it. He wished she had not. "This arrangement is temporary," he said. "Protective custody until the bond is verified." The words landed badly. He knew at the moment Clara's face closed. Not anger. Worse. Practice. "Of course," she said. "Would not want the king accidentally caring about an unverified person." Ashen surged so hard Everett had to grip the back of the chair. Clara's eyes flicked to his hand. "Your wolf hates that sentence too." Everett went still. "You can sense him?" "Not clearly. Just enough to know he has better manners than your counsel and worse patience than a toddler in a grocery store." Against every reasonable instinct, Everett almost smiled. Almost. Then the room's cedar scent thickened. Clara's humor vanished. She stood and crossed to him slowly, not touching, just breathing the air near his shoulder. "That is not yours," she said. "What?" "The cedar. It is layered over your natural scent. Too clean. Too sharp. Like someone polished a forest and expected nobody to complain." Everett looked toward the closed door. "Council incense." "No," Clara said. "A blocker." Silence settled between them. From somewhere down the hall came a long, ugly scrape. Then another. A guard shouted. Everett opened the door. At the far end of the corridor, invisible but unmistakable, Ashen had forced enough presence through the bond to drag his claws down the inside of the council chamber door. 17 seconds later, every elder in Blackwell Palace stopped pretending this was only administrative confusion. By noon, the council chamber door had 4 deep claw marks, and every elder in Blackwell Palace had developed a sudden interest in pretending they had always respected Omegas from basement departments. Clara Whitmore did not believe a word of it. She stood in the scent archive with a lantern in one hand and a ring of old brass keys in the other, listening to rainwater tick through a crack somewhere above the east wall. The palace had given her a guest room, fresh clothes, and a breakfast tray with berries arranged like an apology from someone who had never apologized in their life. None of that explained why the Alpha King smelled like cedar that did not belong to him. None of that explained why Lord Silas had looked at her last name like it was a candle he thought he had blown out years ago. "You are not supposed to be down here," Everett said from the stairwell. Clara did not jump. People who worked alone in basements learned to save fear for useful moments. "That makes 2 of us. Kings usually avoid mold, dust, and records nobody wants found." Everett stepped into the lantern light, tall, quiet, still too controlled for a man whose wolf had vandalized a council door before lunch. "I came to find you." That is becoming a habit. His eyes moved over her face, checking for exhaustion, cold, injury, anything he could fix without admitting he cared. Clara hated that she noticed. She turned toward the shelves. "The cedar blocker is old pack work. Not store-bought. Not casual. Someone with access to royal scent law has been layering it into your chambers, your council robes, probably the incense used before formal meetings." Everett's expression hardened. "Silas." "Maybe." Clara reached for a narrow drawer marked Whitmore, then stopped. Her family name had been scratched out so deeply the wood looked bruised. Or someone who learned from him. Everett came closer, but not too close. That restraint bothered her more than if he had crowded her. Clara, do not use my name like that. Like what? Like you just discovered it has weight. He said nothing. That was the problem with Everett Blackwell. His silence did not feel empty. It felt trained, armored, expensive. Clara slid the drawer open. Inside were 3-cent ribbons, a broken oath pin, and one sealed glass vial wrapped in gray cloth. Her fingers went cold before they touched it. Rosemary, rain, smoke. Underneath it all, tears that felt nothing like her own and somehow exactly like home. That is my mother, Clara whispered. Everett's posture changed. You can tell. Scent memories do not lie. People do. She lifted the vial. The wax seal bore the old crown mark, not the council stamp. Royal custody. Hidden in a basement drawer under a family name everyone pretended not to remember. Clara peeled back the cloth and found a folded note, stiff with age. Her mother's handwriting was small, careful, and written by someone who expected the wrong person to read it first. If this record is opened, then the boy lived, the crown survived, and Silas Gravitt has begun rewriting the truth. Clara read the line twice. The boy, the crown. Everett went very still beside her. Not king still, not council still, boy still. The kind of stillness that belongs to a memory coming back with wet shoes and cold hands. I was 8, he said quietly. There was a fire at the border lodge. They told me rebels attacked. Clara opened the vial. The memory did not show pictures. Scent never did. It gave pieces. Burned cedar. Snowmelt. A woman running. A man saying, "Protect the prince, not our name." Then a child's fear, sharp and silver, wrapped in the scent Clara now knew as Everett's before anyone had polished it into a crown. Everett gripped the edge of the shelf. Your parents were there. Clara's throat tightened, but her voice stayed flat because flat was safer than breaking. My parents saved you. The lantern flame bent in the draft. Above them, somewhere in the palace, the full moon bells began to ring for the alignment ceremony. Everett looked at the vial, then at her. Clara, I did not know. She gave him the smallest smile, and it hurt more than anger. That seems to be a very comfortable thing for kings to say. Footsteps sounded at the top of the stairs. Too many to be servants. Lord Silas's voice floated down, smooth as a locked door. Your Majesty, step away from the archive drawer. Clara closed her hand around her mother's vial. This time, she did not lower her eyes. Lord Silas Gravitt reached the bottom of the archive stairs with 6 council guards behind him and the calm expression of a man arriving to clean up a spill. Clara Whitmore kept her mother's scent vial in her fist. Everett Blackwell stood between her and the guards without making a show of it, which somehow made the gesture louder. The archive is closed during moon ceremonies, Silas said. So is basic decency, apparently, Clara said. One guard looked at the floor so fast his neck nearly gave up. Silas ignored her. Your Majesty, Lady Marinvale is waiting in the High Hall. The pack is assembled. The alliance families are assembled. Your duty is assembled, if I may speak plainly. Everett's face did not change, but Clara felt ashen shift inside him like a storm turning around in a field. You may not, Everett said. Silas's smile cooled. This is not the night for basement ghosts. Clara felt that one hit exactly where he wanted it to. Everett heard her breath catch, and his hand moved half an inch toward her before he stopped himself. Half an inch. That was all. But in a room full of people trained to notice dominance, fear, and weakness, half an inch was a confession. Silas saw it too. Bring the record, he ordered. The guards did not move. Everett looked at them once. That was enough to remind 6 grown wolves that careers were temporary and kings were not. Clara slid the vial into the inner pocket of her borrowed jacket. Good news, she said. The record has declined your invitation. Everett should not have found that funny. His mouth almost betrayed him. Almost. 20 minutes later, Clara stood at the edge of Blackwell Hall in a plain navy dress someone had found in palace storage, still wearing boots better suited for basement floors than royal marble. The full moon ceremony glittered around her like a department store Christmas display with teeth. Silver banners. White candles. 12-pack standards. For 100 wolves pretending not to stare at the forgotten Omega who had walked in behind their king. At the center of the hall, Lady Marinvale waited beside the moon dais. She was beautiful in a pale gold gown, every curl pinned perfectly, Every smile measured to look gentle from 30 feet away. Clara respected the craftsmanship. She had seen taxidermy with less effort. Lord Silas stepped forward and lifted the ceremonial ribbon. Tonight, for the stability of the Blackwell throne, His Majesty will affirm Lady Marin Vale as Luna candidate. Applause moved through the hall, polite and nervous. Everett climbed the dais like a man walking toward a well-marked trap. Clara stood very still. She told herself it did not matter. She told herself kings had duties. She told herself a bond that appeared in the rain did not outrank a lifetime of politics. Her heart did not take notes. Marin reached for Everett's hand. The moment her fingers touched his, the air changed. Clara smelled cedar. Not soft cedar from old closets or winter fires. Sharp cedar. False cedar. The same polished lie layered over Everett's scent. Ashen surged so hard, every candle on the dais shivered. Everett pulled his hand back. Marin's smile flickered for less than a second. Clara saw it. Silas saw Clara seeing it. "Miss Whitmore," Silas called, turning the entire hall toward her. "Since you are so skilled with scent records, perhaps you can explain why the ceremony has become unstable only after your arrival." The room went quiet in that hungry way crowds get when humiliation looks official. Clara's fingers tightened around the hidden vial. Everett looked at her from the dais, trapped between crown and bond. Clara lifted her chin. "Yes," she said. "I can explain." Then the vial in her pocket cracked from the pressure of the mate bond, and the scent of her mother's buried memories spilled into the royal hall. The scent hit Blackwell Hall like a door opening on a room everyone had sworn was empty. Rosemary. Rain. Smoke. A woman's fear wrapped around a child's heartbeat. Clara Whitmore stood at the edge of the moon dais with broken glass warm in her pocket and every wolf in the hall staring at her like she had just dragged a ghost to dinner. Lord Silas recovered first. Men like him usually did. "Seize the record," he said. "Miss Whitmore has contaminated a royal ceremony." Clara laughed once. It came out small and sharp. "That is funny. I was going to say the same thing about you." A ripple moved through the crowd. Lady Marin stepped back from Everett, her perfect gold skirts whispering across the marble. Everett did not look at Marin. He looked at Clara, and for one dangerous second, she thought he might choose her right there, in front of everyone, without asking the council for permission to have a spine. Then Silas spoke again. "Your Majesty, this is exactly the danger I warned you about. An unranked Omega with unauthorized scent craft, standing in the center of a political alignment, releasing unstable memory work before the full pack." Everett's jaw flexed. Ashen pressed close enough that Clara felt the air tighten. "Careful," Everett said. Silas bowed his head, but not his will. "I am being careful. That is why she must be removed." The word removed slid across the hall, clean and ugly. Clara looked at Everett. Not at the king. At the man who had followed her through rain, touched no part of her except the coat on her shoulders, and still somehow made her believe, for one stupid night, that being found meant being kept. "Everett," she said quietly. His name without title turned every elder pale. "Ask him why my mother's memory was locked in royal custody." Everett took one step down from the dais. Silas raised his hand. Under council law, during an active Luna alignment, any disruptive party can be isolated until the ceremony concludes. "She is not a party," Everett said. "No," Silas replied. "She is a liability." The hall waited. Clara waited. The mate bond waited too, bright and aching between them. Everett looked at the council guards, then at the 400 wolves watching from the shadows of banners and candlelight. Royal duty wrapped around him like iron. Clara saw the fight in his face. She saw the boy from the scent memory, the king made out of pressure, the man almost brave enough to break his own cage. Almost was a cruel word. Everett turned to the guards. "Escort Miss Whitmore to the east guest wing. No restraints. No rough handling. No one questions her without my presence." The order was merciful. That was what made it hurt. Clara's expression did not change. She had been forgotten too many times to give a room the satisfaction of watching her break. "Protective custody again," she said. "You really do make abandonment sound official." Everett flinched. Barely. She saw it anyway. A guard approached, gentle and ashamed. Clara stepped away before he touched her. "I know the route." She walked through the hall with her head up, broken glass in her pocket, her mother's truth fading into the air behind her. No one laughed. No one whispered. That almost made it worse. At the side doors, Clara paused and looked back. Everett still stood on the dais, surrounded by candles, council law, and the wrong future. "For what it is worth, Your Majesty," she said, "your wolf chose faster than you did." Then she left. That night, Everett found his coat folded on the guest room chair, dry and empty. Clara was gone. The window was open. Rain blew across the floor, carrying away the last trace of her scent. Everett Blackwell did not shout when he found the empty room. That would have been easier for everyone. Instead, he stood in the doorway with rain blowing across the floor, Clara's scent thinning by the second, and every guard in the corridor realizing silence could be much worse than anger. His coat was folded on the chair so neatly it felt personal. On top of it sat the bent silver dinner token from the north gate. Ashen went still inside him. Not calm. Hunting. "Lock the palace," Lord Silas said from behind him, arriving far too quickly for a man who should not have known Clara was gone. "Search the service roads. Send riders to the bus depot. If she crosses pack lines with royal memory evidence, she becomes a diplomatic threat." Everett turned. "You knew she would run." Silas gave a careful sigh. Forgotten people often mistake attention for safety. It is tragic, but predictable. The old Everett might have listened for the useful part of that sentence. The king. The strategist. The man trained to hear threat before insult. But the man standing in Clara's empty room heard only one thing. She had been alone long enough for Silas to study the shape of it. "No riders," Everett said. "Your Majesty. No palace search teams. No council guards. No one follows her but me." Silas's smile disappeared. "That is not wise." Everett stepped close enough that the cedar scent on Silas's robes hit him like polished rot. "Neither was teaching me to distrust my own wolf." For the first time, Silas had no answer ready. Everett walked past him into the storm. The rain had turned the palace grounds into black glass. Clara had not taken the main road. Of course she had not. She worked in basements, archives, forgotten corridors. She knew how to leave without giving important people the comfort of watching. Everett crossed the lower gardens, past the old laundry wall, where a kitchen boy had left a paper bag under the hedge. Inside were 2 biscuits and a note that said, "For Miss Clara, if she goes this way." Everett stared at it for 3 seconds too long. Then he found another marker by the east service gate. A wool scarf, folded dry beneath a bucket. At the border path, an older patrol wolf pretended not to notice Everett finding a thermos of coffee tucked behind a milepost. Clara had not been invisible to everyone, only to the people who mattered loudest. Ashen pulled him north toward the abandoned Oath Chapel, 7 miles beyond the palace, where the old Blackwell kings used to swear their crowns before marble halls and council signatures made everything colder. Everett found her near dawn. Clara stood before the oath stone in a soaked blue sweater, one hand on the cracked surface, the other holding the broken scent vial. She looked exhausted, furious, and heartbreakingly unsurprised to see him. "Did the council send you to retrieve the liability?" she asked. Everett stopped 10 feet away, close enough to feel the bond, far enough to let her choose the distance. "No, that is a short answer for a king. I left as a man." Clara's face tightened like that hurt worse than a lie. Convenient timing. He took the hit because he deserved it. "I know." She looked back at the oath stone. "My mother sealed something here. If I open it, the pack will know the truth. It may burn out my scent gift for good, but at least Silas will not get to bury her twice." Everett's wolf pushed forward, not to claim, not to command, but to beg. Everett lowered his voice. "Clara, do not sacrifice yourself to prove you were worth protecting." Her laugh shook once. "Then protect me where it costs you something." The chapel went quiet except for rain on the broken roof. Everett stepped beside her, placed his hand on the oath stone, and felt the crown inside him finally become heavier than fear. "All right," he said. "Then we open it together." The oath stone did not glow. Clara had always hated that about old magic. Stories made it sound dramatic, all blue fire and singing walls, but real pack oaths were quieter and far less considerate. The stone simply went cold under her palm, so cold her fingers stiffened. Everett felt it too. His hand tightened beside hers, not on her, never taking what she had not offered, but close enough that the bond between them warmed like a match in a storm. "If this hurts you," he said, "we stop." Clara kept her eyes on the cracked stone. "That is the first royal order I have liked all week." His mouth almost moved. Almost. Then the memory opened. Scent came first. Burned cedar. Wet pine. Baby powder from a child's blanket. Fear, sharp as broken winter air. Clara sucked in a breath as the old chapel disappeared beneath another night. 20 years earlier, when the border lodge had burned and the crown had nearly died with it. She could not see her mother's face, not exactly, but she knew her instantly. Rosemary and Rain. Brave hands. A heartbeat steady because someone else needed it to be. A man's voice followed, deep and strained. Take the prince. Do not let Gravit's men reach the east road. Everett went rigid. That was my father's guard captain. The memory shifted. Small Everett, 8 years old, silent with shock, wrapped in a gray blanket, while Clara's mother carried him through snow behind the lodge. Clara's father stayed at the tree line, covering their trail with ash and cedar oil. Not hiding from rebels, hiding from royal men wearing council marks. Then Silas appeared in the scent memory, younger, smoother, already carrying that terrible calm. The prince survives, he said. The Whitmores do not need to survive with honor. Clara's throat closed. Everett's face had gone pale beneath the rain and chapel shadows. The memory did not show graphic violence. It did not need to. It showed signatures, false statements, scent seals pressed into wax, and her parents' names dragged from oath keepers to traitors by a man who knew history belonged to whoever filed it first. When the stone released them, Clara stumbled back one step. Everett caught himself before he reached for her. She noticed. That restraint, stupidly, hurt. Say something, she said. His eyes were fixed on the stone. My throne was protected by your family. Yes. And my council erased them. Yes. His voice dropped until it barely sounded like a king. And I kept letting that same council tell me what you were. Clara wanted anger to stay clean. It would have been easier. But Everett looked wrecked in a way that did not ask to be comforted, and that made him harder to hate. You did, she said. He nodded once, like he was accepting a sentence. I am sorry. She waited for more. For an explanation. For a royal speech with polished corners. None came. Just Everett Blackwell standing in an abandoned chapel, soaked to the skin, looking at the woman his crown had failed. That is it? Clara asked softly. No defense. No defense would be honest. The bond pulsed between them, not healed, not fixed, but awake. Clara looked toward the palace road, where dawn was beginning to turn the rain silver. An apology in an empty chapel is easy. Everett lifted his eyes to hers. Then tell me where to say it. She stepped past him, clutching the broken vial and the truth her mother had saved for her. Blackwell Hall, she said, where they made me look small. Everett followed her into the rain without calling guards, without giving orders, without asking if she was sure. Behind them, the oath stone cracked straight down the center, releasing one final scent into the morning air. Rosemary, rain, and a mother's pride. Blackwell Hall was still dressed for the ceremony that had tried to erase Clara Whitmore. The silver banners hung from the rafters. The moon dais waited under 400 candles. Lady Maren Vale stood near the front in the same gold gown. Only now her perfect posture looked less like grace and more like someone holding a door shut with her back. Lord Silas Gravett turned when Everett entered beside Clara, and for one priceless second, his face forgot how to be calm. Clara saw it. So did half the room. That helped. Everett did not take the dais. He stopped at the center of the hall and looked at the gathered wolves, elders, servants, guards, alliance families, and every person who had watched Clara walk out alone the night before. This assembly is no longer a Luna alignment, he said. It is a correction. Silas stepped forward. Your Majesty, any evidence recovered outside council supervision cannot be admitted under pack law. Clara lifted the cracked scent vial. That is convenient, since council supervision is the crime. A sound moved through the hall, not quite a gasp, not quite approval. Something alive. Everett looked at her. Go on. 2 small words. No rescue. No interruption. Just space. Clara's hand trembled once before she made it stop. My parents were oath keepers for the Blackwell crown. They were not traitors. They saved the prince during the border lodge fire, and Lord Silas Gravett buried the record because the attackers carried council marks. Silas laughed softly. A moving story from an unranked Omega with a broken bottle. Clara nodded. Fair. I would want more too. She turned toward the side doors. Mrs. Hale, the head laundress, stepped into the hall, gray-haired, sturdy, and holding a cedar-stained ceremonial robe like it had personally insulted her. "Found this in the council wash 3 months running," she said. "Same sharp cedar, same hidden lining. I kept notes because men with titles assume laundry women cannot read." A few servants made very satisfied faces. Silas's eyes hardened. Clara continued, "Patrolman Reeves?" The older border wolf from the East Road stepped forward and placed a weatherproof packet on the dais. "My father told me the Whitmores were loyal. Kept his journal sealed until the oath stone opened. Figured it was time to stop being scared of a dead lie." Lady Marin's smile finally cracked. Everett turned to her. "Did Silas give you cedar oil before the ceremony?" Marin looked at Silas, then at the floor. "He said it would help stabilize your bond. Answer clearly." Her voice shook. "Yes." Silas snapped. "Enough." The word carried alpha pressure, old and practiced, but it did not land the way it used to. Not with Everett standing beside Clara. Not with the servants watching. Not with the truth finally smelling stronger than cedar. Then Ashen emerged. Everett did not fully shift. He did not need to. The shape of the royal wolf came through him like moonlight through storm glass, silver-eyed and enormous in presence, silent beside Clara. Every wolf in the hall lowered their gaze. Ashen stepped forward, took the royal signet chain from Everett's hand, and laid it at Clara's feet. The hall stopped breathing. In Blackwell law, the royal wolf did not choose witnesses. It chose truth. Clara stared at the chain, then at Everett. He lowered himself to one knee before her, in front of every pack rank that had made her invisible. "Clara Whitmore," he said, voice rough but steady. "My crown failed your family. I failed you. Say the word, and I will step down before I let them erase you again." For once, nobody in Blackwell Hall dared speak over her. For a long moment, Clara Whitmore looked at the royal signet chain at her feet and said nothing. That silence did more to Blackwell Hall than any speech could have. For 100 wolves waited on the word of an Omega they had trained themselves not to see. Lord Silas Gravitt stood frozen near the dais, his power unraveling one quiet witness at a time. Everett Blackwell stayed on one knee, rain still drying in his hair, crown still absent from his head, looking less like a king demanding forgiveness, and more like a man finally understanding what a crown was supposed to cost. Clara bent down, picked up the signet chain, and held it in her palm. "Stand up," she said. Everett did. Slowly. "I will not ask you to step down," Clara continued. "That would be too easy." A murmur passed through the hall. Everett's eyes stayed on hers. "Then what do you ask?" Clara looked at the elders first, then the guards, then the servants pressed along the walls, the ones who had left biscuits, scarves, coffee, and courage in small places. "I ask you to rule like loyalty is not something only powerful people can give. My parents were loyal when nobody was watching. Mrs. Hale was loyal in a laundry room. Patrolman Reeves was loyal on a cold road with a sealed journal. And your wolf was loyal before you were brave enough to be." Ashen huffed softly through Everett, offended but not inaccurate. For the first time all night, a few people almost smiled. Clara turned toward Silas. "As for him, I do not want a public spectacle. I want the records restored. I want every false charge against my family removed. I want every Omega registry reviewed by people who have actually been ignored by one. And I want Lord Silas Gravitt stripped of council authority before he teaches another generation that power means deciding who counts." Everett looked to the assembly. "So ordered." Silas tried to speak, but no one moved toward him. That was justice too, in its own quiet way. Not a dramatic fall. Just a man discovering the room had stopped leaning in his direction. Lady Marin stepped forward, pale but steady. "I was afraid of him," she said. "That is not an excuse. I will testify." Clara nodded once. "Then start there." Weeks later, the Whitmore name returned to the honor wall in letters of black iron and silver leaf. Not hidden in a basement drawer. Not whispered in old service corridors. Right beside the oath keepers who had kept the crown alive when the crown had not deserved it yet. Everett offered Clara the Luna title before the full pack, and Clara did not take it that day. The hall went so tense a candle could have filed a complaint. She simply said, "I am not a reward for your redemption. I am a person. Ask me again when this pack knows that without needing a ceremony." Everett bowed his head. "Then I will earn the question." That became the first honest promise Blackwell Palace had heard in years. By the time the next rain came, Clara was back in the scent archive by choice, not exile, rewriting the records with a fresh cup of coffee beside her, and Everett standing awkwardly near the shelves with a stack of corrected registry files. "Royal documentation support," he said. Clara glanced at the files. "You alphabetized these wrong. I am an Alpha King. That is not a defense against the alphabet." Ashen gave a long, suffering sigh from somewhere behind Everett's eyes. Clara smiled then, small and real. Everett saw it and did not try to own it. He only stood there, grateful to be allowed near it. Outside, rain tapped against the palace windows, no longer hiding her tears, only washing the old dust from the stones. And in Blackwell Pack, people remembered the lesson long after the scandal faded. A throne is not proven by who kneels before it, but by who it refuses to leave forgotten in the rain.